Hello and welcome to my video all about how to sew mitered corners. Mitered corners are a very neat and professional way of finishing off flat corners in your sewing projects. For instance, on placemats, tablecloths and napkins. Mitered corners are created from right angles, and once you've finished, the fabric edges will meet at 45 degrees. They look good from the front and the back, and they have less bulk than other corner finishing methods. The first thing you need to do is take your fabric and put it upside down on your work surface, so that the front or right side of the fabric is facing down. In my example, I simply have a rectangle of fabric that I'm turning into a placemat. You then need to fold in 1 inch of fabric on each side and press with an iron. So on each edge you fold 1 inch of fabric over and press in place. You should end up with something like this. Next you do the same thing, but this time for 1/4 of an inch of fabric. The resulting fabric edges should look like this. You should have a fold 1 inch from the edge and 1/4 of an inch from the edge on each side. By using these particular measurements, the finished width of my mitered corner will be 3/4 of an inch. That's because the first fold minus the second fold is 1 inch minus 1/4 of an inch, which is 3/4 of an inch. Feel free to adjust these measurements so that your finished mitered corner is exactly the size that you want. For the next step, you'll need a ruler and fabric pen, and you'll need to make 2 marks on each of the fabric edges. These marks will be twice the width of the fold from each corner. So in this case, twice the width of the fold is 2 times 1 inch, which is 2 inches. So you measure 2 inches from each corner and make a mark. You do this twice per corner, so on each edge you'll end up with 2 marks. You then simply join up these marks with your ruler and draw a line between them. For the next step, you need to pick up a corner of the fabric. You need to fold this corner in half so that the reverse of the fabric is on the outside and the front of the fabric is on the inside. You then need to turn out the fabric at the edge, along that second fold, so that the front of the fabric is visible around the edge, like so. Make sure the edges of this folded fabric line up, and then pin in place. All you have to do then is simply sew along the fabric pen line. You can do this using a straight stitch on a sewing machine, or you can hand sew it. After you've sewn the line, it should look like this. You then need to remove the excess fabric at the corner. So you take your scissors and you make 1 cut from the pointed end of the corner. Basically, the aim of this cut is to make that corner triangle into an equilateral triangle, i.e. a triangle with equal length sides. And I cut right down to about 1 or 2 millimeters from the stitched line. You obviously don't want to cut the stitch line because that will make a hole, but you want to go pretty close. The next and final cut is parallel to the stitch line. So you just cut that excess fabric off in a straight line, about 1/4 of an inch from the stitches. You then do exactly the same for the other corners in your project, and then you can turn those corners right side out. You can then use an iron to press the corners and also repress the folds just to get a nice, neat, professional finish. As a final step, to keep those folds in place permanently, you need to stitch around the hem. I used a straight stitch that was 2.5 millimeters long, and I stitched 1/2 inch away from the outside edge. You can see the finished mitered corners in these photos. And that's it, that's how you make a mitered corner. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and thank you very much for watching.